Uranium prices are up 6% for the year, while uranium stocks are actually beating the overall market. We're going to go over the upcoming catalysts. We're going to go over the thesis, the updated thesis for uranium, and we're going to cover some big things all together. And it's just looking really good for the uranium sector. As always, October is really when the price of uranium goes up. We're going to look back to the past, and we're going to talk about the overall market as well as the uranium market. But you guys, thank you so much for the support on the channel. Go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button below. Give me your like number. And this back behind me, by the way, this green thing, that's actual physical uranium that you are going to win. One of those, if you guess the price of uranium by the beginning of this year, January coming up, if you guess the right price. Now go ahead and give me your like number below again and tell me, do you think that uranium is underperforming compared to the overall markets? And we're about to jump into this and look at uranium compared to everything else. But first off, we're going to see that these are the uranium stocks that are up year to date. Now, of course, Cameco, it is the leader in the industry right now and has been. It hit that new high back in April along with UEC down here. But these are the stocks in uranium, and you notice these are the bigger market cap stocks. These are the most liquid stocks, right? So of course, when big funds are coming into them, they're not going to sell right when you see the spot price going down, right? But day traders, swing traders sometimes do. But we did see UEC was one of the ones that actually did close up on Friday. But you can see since July, these are up a bunch. And the overall market is now, the NASDAQ, back to where it was in July. Now, this is the overall stock market year to date. This is every single stock. You can see Microsoft, Google, these are down almost 30% for some of these. Tesla down here, down 20%. Now, we can even change this up and look at the S&P 500. So there's less stocks, obviously. And you could see that a lot of these big stocks, a lot of big companies, really what the market rides on are down. But energy minerals, what do you know? They're up here, right? Health services, some utilities. But overall, the overall stock market is down pretty big, for the year. But UEC on Friday actually closed up. You can see close to 1.5%. Now, we've had a big pullback, but we know in that stock, as well as some of the other uranium stocks, bigger ones, the more liquid, we've seen 15 to 18% moves in a day. And, if we go down here, the short volume on UEC and Cameco both are actually up a little bit. Looks like we probably had some shorts covering in some of those. But the thing is, the overall market this year has been devastated, right? And how much more can we go? And we're going to talk about that. But the thing is, uranium stocks, we haven't even really seen their run, okay? We've seen a big move, right, since 2020. But the thing is, these uranium stocks have a lot more to move because they haven't even really gotten into production. Uranium prices aren't even where they need to be for uranium stocks to start making a profit, to get a lot of these mines up. But they will, because that needs to happen in order for the demand that's coming. The supply has to meet that, right? And these new utility contracts are obviously coming. This is all the uranium stocks in Australia. And by the way, you guys, if you want access to this, there is a link in the description below. I'm an affiliate now with TradingView. I love TradingView. And then you can get the link to all of my stocks here, uranium, that I watch. And, all the sectors kind of divided up. So it's really nice. And as well, the heat map here. I love using this for all you from Australia. It has Australia as well. You can see this is year to date for all the Australian stocks. And what do you know? Energy minerals over there are up as well. So this is ASX, 200, but I love this thing. I mean, you can go every stock in the overall market, and you can do by market cap. This thing's awesome. Number of employees, you got dividend yield percentage, you got the volume, you can break it up, midday, you can do weeks, months. You can do the volume price 1 hour. So there's just so much. I love this, by the way. It's a nice visual. It's nice to zoom out sometimes and just look at the overall market. And these uranium stocks, remember, trade in packs. So whenever these are doing pretty well, you'll probably see a lot of the charts looking very similar. Now, Energy Fuels did go down a lot more. Now, they're exposed, obviously, to the RE side as well. So if traders that are in that stock just for the REs, now sometimes that happens with uranium stocks that have other assets out there. And if that asset sometimes is doing worse or the overall market has volatility, sometimes you see those types of things. But, with Cameco was recently, just a couple days ago, right, at almost an 11-year high. We're seeing that break again. If we break past this, that's a new 11-year high. And this is looking really good for Cameco. Once we do that, we break a new 11-year high. It's going to be really good, I think, for the overall sector. I think uranium prices will be a lot higher. Before we get into this, I want you to see, this is the NASDAQ compared to uranium stocks. So the NASDAQ's down 28%. We saw the visual there, but uranium is doing very well. Now, uranium prices in the spot are up about 6%, okay, on the ask. Now, gold's down, what, about 5%, silver down 13%, inflation, we're at 8.3%, rates are at 2.5%, Bitcoin's down 59%, Dogecoin 66%. Dogecoin's still like bigger than majority of the uranium producers put together and developers. Now we have the top market cap uranium stocks. These are their percentage for the year. Cameco is 23%, Deep Yellow 14%, UEC's 4%, and then Sprott Physical Uranium Trust is 7%. Now the NASDAQ, we have a big drop. So Peloton's minus 91%, DocuSign's 80%, and then Zoom 73%. You can see how much these are down, okay? These are all the NASDAQ stocks. These are massive stocks. Intel's down 46%, okay? These are very, very big stocks. PayPal, Facebook's down 60% here. And some of the biggest stocks on the market obviously being down. And then you can see uranium stocks, uranium prices on these. The biggest market cap uranium stocks for the most part are doing pretty well year to date. Now, I don't think that this is even close to being the end of the run for uranium, but it just shows you how well it's performing. Now, we're going to go into the updated kind of thesis for uranium here. Now, the first thing is John Quakes just posted this. He got it down. He told me to like 4 pages. It's really tough so it could fit on one post because obviously there's so much bullish uranium stuff out there, news and catalysts, right? But we're going to go over this. We're also going to go over Kevin Bambrough, what he's saying, calling for $200 uranium. Again, this really mirrors last year, everybody. Now, we'll see how things go in the next coming few weeks. But one other thing before we jump into this thesis, which is really big, we saw uranium prices last year dip to about $37. But this was during the end of September. And then overnight, I think it was the 11th of October, they jumped $12 overnight. Just over a weekend, right? So $12, boom, up. It's $49, I think, on the ask. And this was over just pretty much overnight. Now, there's, way less uranium in the spot market now. So I think the moves could be a lot bigger than a $12 move overnight. And a lot of other people do as well, Kevin Bambrough. And we'll go through his little updated thesis and then we'll look at some more news for the overall market. But this is kind of preparing you for the week this week for uranium, the overall market, and where we might end up. Because remember, uranium stocks do really well in high inflation environments, high rate environments, and that money in the stock market has to flow somewhere. And if uranium stocks are breaking new highs, 11-year highs, not just year highs, but 11-year, it's going to get a lot of publicity, as I've always said. But the fundamental catalyst, the long-term contracting is really where it's at. And with the spot market, obviously, it's just showing us that there is a little bit of activity. But really with the selling recently, just a few dollars down in the spot market, it's really just small amounts of traders, probably 100,000 pounds, what it looks like dropping the bid and ask. But we've seen long-term contracting starting up. We've seen Centrus Energy starting up their LEU contracting, right, as well with utilities. And Energy Fuels got a 3 million pound contract as well up into like 2026. So we're starting to see things go, but we're really got to wait for that long-term contracting, the long-term uranium price. And that's really what a lot of these catalysts are going to play into. So the first thing, the Biden administration signed into law the Inflation Reduction Act. This provided $30 billion for support for maintaining the U.S. nuclear reactor fleet, the largest boost to the U.S. nuclear industry in decades. By the way, this is John Quakes. He has the 4 of these. You go follow him on Twitter. So this put nuclear energy as the same equal footing as wind and solar for green energy for the eligibility for these zero emission production tax credits. So $250 billion in DOE loan, as well as a clean energy innovation funding for new nuclear reactor construction projects and nuclear production of hydrogen. And also it provides the $700 million towards developing a domestic supply of high assay low enriched uranium. And for these new reactors, these small modular reactors, advanced ones. And this is really bullish. This was a big catalyst that happened. It is happening. And it's helping these restarts of these nuclear reactors as well as extensions. The Biden administration has asked for $1.5 billion in emergency funding for acquisition and distribution of low enriched uranium and high assay low enriched uranium to address potential future shortfalls in access to Russian uranium and nuclear fuel services, signaling that a ban on the import of Russian uranium may be imminent. Sources in Washington indicate that this is the first installment of a $4.3 billion strategy developed in June by the DOE to buy enriched uranium directly from domestic producers to replace supply from Russia. 1.5 billion will inject major stimulus into the US domestic nuclear fuel industry for uranium mining to enrichment services. Now, why this is pretty big, and I'll touch on this as well. We're seeing the US government really want a nuclear energy renaissance for the US. This enrichment side, that 4.3 billion is huge, but this is going to be buying, uranium, physical uranium, the 1.5 billion. So this is signaling the US government might be looking at banning this, because we know that they can't just do this right overnight, right? But Russia could. Russia can ban, and we're going to look at what Rosatom just said, the head of Rosatom, about what's going on in the world with nuclear. And it is a wake-up call for US utilities, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And the other thing, Gavin Newsom signed a new law aimed at keeping the state's Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant in operation until 2030. We're seeing this all over. Holtec has announced it is working on a plan to restart the 769 megawatt Palisades nuclear power plant in Michigan. They were going to retire this one, but one other thing, Holtec is actually looking at building a gigafactory of small modular reactors where they could pump out small modular reactors, because these small modular reactors, they can put them almost in like a line where like a battery pack would, right? And they could have just as much energy that a big 1,000 megawatt nuclear reactor pretty much could put out. They could stack these up. Well, this is Holtec, and Holtec's announced this. They're looking to get a government loan as well for that. So that's something I can add about that as well. Now, the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, NRC, announced that the NuScale Power 50 megawatt power module is the first SMR designed, certified, and approved in the United States. Now, there is a big pipeline, 70 plus, that are actually about to get the exact same license. So although NuScale was one of the first to get it, there are a bunch that are pending right now, and a bunch of big companies, way bigger, that have had, 50, 60, 70 years in the industry in nuclear are working on this as well. So there's mega competition, and competition's good for prices in uranium because it's going to be a lot of demand coming, right? Now, the U.S. utility Southern Company has notified the Nuclear Regulatory Commission of its intent to apply for a 20-year extension for the operation license of both the Edwin Hatch nuclear power plant in Georgia, and the Tennessee Valley Authority has announced that it plans to extend the largest nuclear plant, the Browns Ferry, for another 20 years. So this tax credit has really been very good for, obviously, these older nuclear reactors that need these extensions, need money and funding, right? Now, the Tennessee Valley Authority announced an agreement with GE for development of the BWRX 300 SMRs. Like I told you, a lot of competition, a lot of great things coming out. Fuel loading is now set to begin in October for the first of the two 1,250 megawatt AP1000 reactors under construction in the U.S. at the Vogtle nuclear power plant there in Georgia. 3 has received the final NRC approval to load fuel and begin operation. Both the reactors under construction are expected to come online in 2023, very quickly. Chemical giant Dow is collaborating with X Energy to deploy an advanced XE100 high-temperature gas reactor to provide carbon-free process heat at one of its U.S. Gulf sites by 2030, the first U.S. manufacturer to deploy an SMR to power its facilities. And I really do think that if we see Elon Musk ever go with a nuclear small modular reactor, get into the industry, it's going to go mainstream. It's going to be huge. And I think a lot of other companies will want to jump into it, especially for these gigafactories, right? These big, huge mega gigafactories, the biggest in the world, they need a lot of power. And it would be so smart to have these clean nuclear energy, right? Small modular reactors. Now, boosted by the Inflation Reduction Act, nuclear tax credits for smaller, safe, clean, and affordable uranium-fueled power plants, Holtec plans to expand its Camden factory in the 7.4 billion giga manufacturing facility. That's what I was talking about earlier, by the way. For these 160 plus reactors. This is massive. That's what I was talking about earlier. 2 775 megawatt reactors at Mexico's Laguna Verde nuclear power plant have been granted a 30-year operating life extension. Continue their uranium demand into the mid-2050s. Ontario's Power Generation OPG has issued a $300 million nuclear green bond, first of its kind for the company. Funds are to refurbish the Darlington plant to extend production of clean, safe, low-cost, emission-free electricity for another 30 years. Terrestrial Energy and Investment Alberta have entered into an agreement supporting construction of the IMSR, this salt reactor there in Western Canada. Japan's Prime Minister has pledged to restart a total of 17 reactors by summer. Now, they are adding a new advanced reactors to the grid, so 25 of Japan's idle reactors have applied for these restart approvals so far. So this is going to be a massive, accounted for uranium demand. Rolls-Royce announced a plan to export its flat packs SMR to Japan after a Japanese government ended its moratorium on a new nuclear reactor construction. And Japan's KER, its 826 megawatt number 3 nuclear reactor on August 30th actually restarted. China has announced that it will accelerate nuclear power projects amid a wider effort to combat future electricity shortages, indicating that they will raise the number of new reactors builds approval from the current 6 to 8 to 10 or more a year. You know, we've covered that. First concrete pouring has officially launched construction of the first unit of 2 1,250 megawatt CAP 1000 reactors to be built in China. Construction has begun the new 1,150 megawatt reactor there in China, one of China's 39 reactors in the advanced planning phase towards an accelerated nuclear build-out. Now, China has approved construction of 4 more nuclear reactors, these 1,150 megawatt reactors, and this is actually bringing its 2022 approval up to 10 so far this year. Okay, this is a record. Construction of the second of the 4 scaled Arctic floating nuclear power plants for Russia has begun in China. South Korea announced that it is reducing weather-dependent intermittent solar and wind power in its 2030 draft of energy plan while increasing baseload nuclear power to 33%. South Africa is also looking to do the same, saying that they and other nations are learning a lesson from the energy crisis in Germany. Ultrasafe Nuclear Corporation and South Korea's Hyundai Engineering are collaborating to advance ultra-safe micro reactors. Now, I really like these, by the way. These multi-purpose high-temperature reactors for electricity, heat, and hydrogen production. I really like the Ultra-Safe Nuclear Corporation. They pretty much are meltdown-proof, right? Really, really great idea. South Korea will invest $100 million in its nuclear energy sector this year in an effort to rebuild the sector and expand nuclear power generation that's previously been phased out. And also the construction of Egypt's very first nuclear power plant got underway, pouring the concrete, the first 4 1,200 megawatt reactors to be built there in Egypt. Pretty much one of the first of its kind, right? In a country like that. Construction is now underway on a 4th 1,200 megawatt reactor built in Turkey. 4.8 gigawatts is what they're pushing there at the nuclear power plant. 2 1,200 megawatt reactors have now received construction license at Hungary's PAX 2 nuclear expansion project. Fuel loading and initial startup of the Slovak Mokchev 3 nuclear reactor has now been approved. We've covered pretty much all of these. I don't know if he's going to talk about it in this, but remember Saudi Arabia as well. We're talking about South Korea. Saudi Arabia is looking to get the 10 nuclear power plant deal with Saudi Arabia, which is pretty much the first of its kind. Huge if big oil gets into nuclear energy, right? It's a huge signal. Kazakhstan, world's largest uranium producer, officially launched a project to construct the nation's first nuclear power plant. I mean, why wouldn't they? A country that's #1 leading producer in uranium not have nuclear? It's crazy. In 2017, Kazakhstan cut its uranium production to 20% below maximum permitted levels for 3 years. From 2018 to 2020, they extended it 3 times to 2023. Kazatomprom has announced that their supply discipline will extend through 2024 at 10% below maximum permitted levels, as uranium prices still don't signal a return to full production. Boris Johnson says, "Go nuclear, go large," pledging massive expansion of nuclear power in his final act as prime minister, reaffirming plans to build 8 new large reactors at a pace of 1 a year and funding of 700 million euros stake in the newly approved 3.2 gigawatt Sizewell C nuclear power station. Now, ministers were also given new powers to fast-track approval to build new nuclear power plants. The UK government also announced $3.3 million in new funding to support the development of advanced nuclear technology. Sadly, not all reactors will be upgraded and extended, okay? We know this. We know that there needs to be new ones built. Rolls-Royce is preparing to build a fleet of 16 factory-made 470 megawatt modular reactors in the UK and now has revealed its short list of 7 locations being considered for the first of the 3 new 200 million SMR facilities to be built. UK's Rolls-Royce is actually expanding development of its factory 750 megawatt nuclear SMRs to the Netherlands and the Czech Republic. And they're looking at the whole European market. France has pledged to quickly restart 32 reactors currently offline for maintenance and technical issues. 6 of the 32 have now been restarted, with a restart target of 50 to 56 French reactors in operation by the end of the year. France is also doubling down on nuclear, saying that the construction of 6 new generation EPR reactors is at the top of the energy security agenda. New EU taxonomy declaring nuclear to be green and sustainable became law on July 12th. France's EDF became the first EU bond issuer to harness that hard-fought inclusion of nuclear by announcing a green financing of nearly 8 billion euros for the annual reactor spending. And Belgium has announced that they are close to completing a deal with their life extensions on these reactors that they have there. They've got a bunch there they're looking to extend. And Switzerland's oldest nuclear reactor is given approval to restart as well. A power grid stress test conducted in Germany recommended extending at least 2 of the 3 reactors scheduled for shutdown this year. And they're still trying to push that, right? The United States has presented an offer to Poland to build 6 new 1,250 megawatt Westinghouse AP1000 reactors to meet their objective to transition from coal to 6 to 9 gigawatts of carbon-free nuclear power. Poland copper and metals producer signed a deal with Romania for their small modular reactors to power its mining operation. Now, Spain is also actually looking at Westinghouse. They've agreed to team up to provide nuclear fuel for Russian-built VVER reactors there. U.S. Westinghouse and Ukraine have signed an agreement to build 9 new AP1000 nuclear reactors. An IAEA team of nuclear experts successfully carried out a mission to inspect and report the safety and security of the Z plant there in Ukraine, establishing and permitting presence to ensure its ongoing safety. Now, everything's safe for now, but we're going to talk about what Rosatom is saying. Remember, Rosatom is all in this, right? They're the ones that really could ban this enrichment from the West, as well as other nuclear products. And I'm going to talk about that because we're going to see what they just said, Rosatom's lead director. And it's not looking good for U.S. utilities if they expect fuel from them in the future. Sweden's KD party, part of a recent elected right-wing political bloc, has called for 10 to 12 nuclear reactors to be built. You know, I broke that one. I broke that news. That was probably, a couple weeks ago. So it looks like it's not their exact party. The one that's called for these reactors did not win specifically the lead, but they're a part of that group. So it really did change what was going on in Sweden. And Sweden does have nuclear reactors, but they're wanting to build new ones, right? So the World Nuclear Association, and by the way, it doesn't mean that there's going to be mining there. They're probably not going to be able to get mining going. They did, I think, vanadium. They let them do vanadium, steel, something like that, but not uranium. So the World Nuclear Association held its annual symposium in London. By all accounts, it was the most upbeat and optimistic symposium ever held by the WNA. Now, we've got this fueling symposium that'll be in, I think, October. And this is going to be big for uranium. I think that's going to really kick off this really big run in uranium. And it's, like I said, it's there in Vegas. We talked about it before. Elon Musk has once again publicly raised his pro-nuclear stance by tweeting countries should be increasing nuclear power generation. Is insane for a national security standpoint and bad for the environment to shut them down. Acclaimed filmmaker Oliver Stone's new documentary film Nuclear premiered on August 9th in Venice. Now, this film is actually looking to win an Oscar feature. They're going down the Oscar route. It has won a bunch of awards already. It's getting good recognition, and I think that there's not going to be too much competition in the feature documentary this year realm. This one, being a filmmaker like Oliver Stone, he's definitely, I think, going to get nominated. There's no doubt. You can't not nominate it, especially it's going down the route for this big Oscar push. And a lot of you ask me, when will it be out? More than likely at the beginning of the year. Usually these films kind of want to get the film out, especially before the Oscars, so people can see it. But once it gets nominated and wins, it's really probably going to do a big nationwide, release theatrically. Maybe just a few days, but still, I think they will have this theatrical release soon. Uranium spot price for conversion of the uranium and U-308 into UF6 rose once again in August to a new all-time record of $38 a kilogram of uranium, signaling that a wave of mined U-308 demand is soon. Remember, uranium is going to be the last one. When we get these UF6 record prices, uranium is next, right? This overfeeding is going to start to happen, right? Finally, Quakes says that these are some of the things that were said from veterans in the uranium mining space. I've never seen anything like it. Into all the decades I've worked in the industry, no one predicted a new nuclear energy renaissance to unfold in 2022. Nuclear power resurgence was never part of the already bullish supply versus demand fundamentals in the uranium investment thesis. I did predict a lot of this, this nuclear energy renaissance. Go look at my tweets. I've been saying that inflation is really going to cause the world to look at their energy consumption, as well as where they get their energy. And we knew this for the past couple of years. That was my thesis, that there was going to be a bunch, and it was always from the East, right? It was the Eastern plates, what I've been saying. We knew that Japan and China were going to probably push nuclear again. And they did, right? Nobody knew the war was going to happen last year, right? Nobody knew that we were going to have issues with a lot of the world's uranium in the future, possibly with this war. No one really knew that. But at the beginning of January, I was signaling that. I was saying that Kazatomprom, Kazakhstan, and Russia being on the border of Ukraine, I said that from my sources that they were going to invade, and they did. Now, this was nice what Quakes put out, but Kevin Bambrough, he's going to go to another side. I think things are going to be parabolic, okay? So if you're a fuel buyer for a nuclear power utility and you don't have 10 years of fuel coverage, you should get busy, because many of you simply will not be able to contract supplies at what your superiors currently think are acceptable prices. Now, Kevin Bambrough, he's the OG. He called the last uranium bull market run, and what Sprott Physical Uranium Trust is now, he was the head of before it became Sprott Physical Uranium Trust. They tried to do this back in the day with SPUT, but they couldn't get it up in time. But what he says is a spike to at least $200 a pound of uranium and sustained pricing above $150 a pound is going to be required to spur investment inflows into many of the new mines that will be required, as well as conversion, enrichment capacity, and fuel fabrication. So as soon as it will become obvious to all that there is little to no supplies to contract and the market is going to squeeze just like it did in the last cycle, you really need to ask yourself, what's your thinking, right? What are you thinking? So some key industry players are out of their minds modeling the future based on a 2% average inflation expectation, right? Commodity and resource industry labor inflation is going to ramp up and blow away all expectations. The commodity boom is just starting. And I've been saying this since 2020. When we had a lot of issues, I said, inflation's coming. I said inflation adjusted uranium prices is just inflation in the future is going to be $200, not even with a record uranium renaissance. And I was saying this back February, March of 2020, right? So every input will cost dramatically more. Mining financings will prove difficult. Without very high prices, we got to have these uranium prices higher for these mines to get up. So get ready to pay up. So he said there is no cheaper commodity than uranium. It has the largest current production consumption deficit, and it has the biggest demand growth forecast over the next 10 to 15 years. It also is the only commodity that its consumers will pay nearly anything for when it's in short supply, while at the same time being relatively irrelevant to the same consumer due to it being a small input in the total cost of nuclear power. And it is true. I think Kevin was saying that 1 cent per kilowatt across the board, if the uranium prices go to $200, 1 cent per kilowatt is really all it would raise. Inflation is raising the prices way more than that for a price of electricity, right? And it will soon take the stage as one of the world's most important commodities that nearly no one owns due to the tiny market cap of uranium producing sector. Ultimately, it will become an extremely profitable must-own sector where the owners of more economic permitted deposits make long-term sustainable margins and deliver cash flow to their shareholders. The market cap of the industry will rise by tenfold before the market peaks. Tiny caps that hold largest prospective land that can be proved up and permitted stand to make the most gains. Okay, I think a lot of uranium producers in the US that have that with the permits, they're going to be the ones, right? Tenfold is not a big stretch. I think a lot of the stocks could go even higher. People should realize that during the nuclear and uranium bear markets, the number of nuclear fuel buyers dramatically diminished. Just a couple years ago, most were predicting a relatively bleak future for the industries. They are as wrong at the bottom as they will be at the top. And it's true. These people have no clue what they're talking about. The people that are forecasting $50 uranium for the future, it's insane. I mean, do you not look at inflation out there? Only a select few sat waiting for the last decade post-Fukushima and nailed the bottom on the uranium marketing. the market, right? A few. We seen Centrus Energy was one of them. 2018 got those locked in LEU contracts with Russia and France. Perfect timing, right? And they're veterans in the industry. The DOE, their CEO Dan, he's was the Department of Energy secretary, right? So the current pullback in resources is purely a result of the collapse of overvalued tech, meme, and crypto. Like I was saying earlier, how much they're down, right? Along with a general correction in the overvalued equities and a bubble bond value, just like the early 2000s bubble collapse. As soon as things stabilize and central banksters return to supporting financials with endless liquidity, right? As they always will, we will find that the shortage of real goods is serious and only getting worse. Proven resources are depleting, and investment in new exploration and production is extremely scarce. Poke around and look at capital inflows into commodity stocks now versus the past boom periods. The sectors are starving for capital. We are entering the biggest commodity bull of the last 100 years as the world tried to retool for a new economy. And this is really big. We're seeing uranium stocks across the board. I want to show you the chart in a minute, all of them, how much they actually are up, okay? Now, Kevin did say some other stuff in this, I believe. He said, whatever your choice is, bet on one, a career nuclear field buyer who was smart enough to get a PhD, but so scared of a real challenge that they signed up for a career government-like job that is about as intellectually stimulating as watching paint dry. Or, he says, bet on the guy that dropped out of university, which is Kevin. He felt it wasn't challenging and preferred to select his own curriculum and spend his life studying the history of markets, who succeeded as a trader and money manager and retired at 43 years old, owns zero fixed income. So Kevin, of course, Kevin's done really well. Kevin does day and swing trade like me. He's bought physical uranium. He leveraged up. I think he's probably made like $10 million just on, I think, his uranium trade. Now, he does buy some low market cap uranium stocks sometimes and really moves the stock. But he's pretty good trader, pretty good investor. I like his look on it. I like his take on where things are going. I think him and I were the only ones really saying $200 uranium in March of 2020 last year. We got a lot of hate for it. There's still a lot of clowns out there hating, but they will see when uranium breaks out to new highs, right? Get into some of the news in one sec, but I want to show you the overall stocks. I'm going to give you kind of a little bit of a rankings update so you can see, you can pause the channel in a second. I'll show you that, but I want to show you since July, a lot of the uranium stocks here are up 20 to 80%. And this is why the day and swing trading has been very good on these. So, from UEC up, the top 35 or so are up 20%, up 20 to probably 80, 85%, right? Updates here. Now, still my top four, really what I think: UEC, Energy Fuels, Cameco, Centrus. And Centrus Energy, I think, is the one that's up the most out of all those just since July. But we're seeing, Cameco still reach almost, like I said, that new 11-year high. Now, some of the things that have changed. Encore Energy, I think what they're doing is basically what I was telling them to do in 2020. I said, you got to do that reverse split. You got to get on the New York Stock Exchange. So I really do like that. So I gave, them a boost. They're kind of up there. Now, kind of one that's on a wild card here is Anfield Energy. I think the stock market cap, $31 million is ridiculous for the 29 million pounds that they have, the mill there that they have. It's still, but the real problem I haven't bought this stock is management is just ridiculous. Okay. Management, everybody at management just keeps cashing out. If they want to be an M&A company, freaking buy on the market and quit selling, quit freaking cashing out these options. And, the warrants really overhead is really what's going on here. I think that you got UEC, I think 70 something million warrants there. It could be a takeout target. It's looking very close to the UEX, what happened with UEX. Now, we had the same issues with management with that stock, right? And Laramide's another one here, kind of got bumped up. The jurisdiction I think is really good. The reason why we get the most jurisdiction right here with Anfield with the price is that mill that they got, the assets. And I really do like the warrants now that UEC has. Like I said, I think it's going to be a takeout target. Now, Laramide, some of their assets I really didn't care for much, but in $100+ uranium environment, I kind of like it a lot more when that happens. Now, everything else is still kind of the same. And remember, this does not mean that I own a stock here if it's higher ranked. This is just kind of what number I give it. And it does change as things change. But, you know, also let me know below, guys, do you think, what rank would you give a certain stock that I don't have on here or that you think should be on here? Let me know below. You know, Silex Systems, we'll talk about that stock. You guys have been asking me, but I want you to see the NASDAQ. So the past year, this is what the NASDAQ looks like. This is what most of the stocks on the NASDAQ look like. This is pretty crazy. Very, very big stocks. We talked about those earlier, but that's kind of where we're at right now. Now we see crude, where crude is up just 0.5%. I think that there's been a really big pullback specifically for energy, you know, the past month. I think that's going to change as winter comes, very likely to change. And I think that uranium is actually, for the year, spot uranium is up 6%. Now on here, this is going off of year over year. And I think it's saying right now, uranium is at -4%. So this is not the year to date. Now, uranium is very, very likely to hit big highs in October. Now, one of the last couple things we'll cover in this. So Russia nuclear chief, he says, this is Rosatom's director, that the IAEA politicizes Ukrainian power plant crisis, the Z plant. And he said that because they passed this resolution, right, on Thursday, that Russia needs to leave. Now, Rosatom has been there. Their employees known about this, right? They're the ones really, they have a big hand in this. Now, they know full well, this is what their director said, what is happening there and where attacks are coming from. I don't know if that's true. I don't think that that's true. I think that there's obviously a war. Things are happening there. They definitely share this information online with the headquarters, and political components is added at some stage. Rosatom's said, their director, in an interview on Sunday, the Z power plant in southern Ukraine is Europe's largest nuclear power plant. IAEA chief has proposed a safe zone. Now, one of the things they actually did say, the IAEA board governors passed this resolution on Thursday demanding that Russia immediately cease all actions there at the plant. And Russia says Ukrainian troops have been shelling the nuclear power plant that, you know, they're at Russia since March. I don't think that's true. Now, this is getting a little interesting because remember, Rosatom, these players of Rosatom are now sanctioned. And in 2018, when they got sanctioned, they actually put in legislation in Duma that says that they were going to ban the exports of enrichment to the West, okay, to the US at the time. Now, all of these Rosatom players are pretty much now sanctioned. So I think that you're not only starting to see this, they're getting fed up. They could withhold enrichment to the West. And I think that is the next play. If you are looking this, you know, in the future, 100 years from now, and you're saying, what could have Putin done to put a stronghold against the West and maybe secure, they would put sanctions on the West. Like it's, what is it? It's like $1 billion a year, $1 billion maybe to the US that they make. That's nothing. If they put sanctions on the US, the price of uranium would go up. So if they had anything to do with the overall industry, they probably would make more money like they're kind of doing with, have done with oil. So I think that that's really what we got to look at. There is a big chance that that does happen. Now, you got to remember what the overall market's doing now. Uranium is still doing pretty well. But let me know in the comments below, do you think that, are you a little disappointed with the performance of uranium? What prices do you think uranium will be January 1st? You got to be subscribed to win this physical glowing uranium. And by the way, it is real uranium. It is safe. In case you broke it open when you get it and ate it, that's the only reason. Don't do that. That it wouldn't be safe, but it is glowing. I got some big things coming on this channel very, very soon for you guys. And if you guys like these uranium videos, please hit the like and subscribe button below. Let's get this video to 1,200, 1,400 likes. We can break that easily. Things are heating up. Uranium stocks are doing pretty good compared to the overall market. October really is the month when we're probably going to see bigger runs in uranium prices. So let me know below, do you think that's going to happen?